watch episode 7. I cannot believe it's been 7 episodes. And this one is entitled Growing Pains. So, this episode starts with good old Barry, Iris, and the Speed Force. Iris was basically quarantined to the apartment the entire episode, and Barry does not trust the Speed Force. He wakes up in the morning, Iris wakes up, the Speed Force had cooked them this whole huge breakfast, and then, Iris is just, the Speed Force is like, oh, I hope I'm not intruding or overstepping, and Iris is like, no, it's good having you here. Barry's like, bullshit. Because he's still not really comfortable with with the whole thing with the Speed Force. So then, he gets an alert on his phone because, he's still a CI. The Speed Force wants to come with him. She's just like, oh, can I come? And he's just like, no. He's just like, look, he said, this isn't a metahuman threat. This isn't like something. She was just like, he was like, it's just my job. Like, let me go do my job. But she was like, oh, but I can power you up because, like, at this point, the Speed Force is basically a walking battery for him. She just walks around just like keeping him charged. And again, it's like I said in the last episode, the Speed Force basically manifests herself into looking like Barry's mom, because since love is what birthed the new Speed Force, she's feeling the love, she's feeling the overjoy, she's feeling like, the need to want to, like, be around people. So of course she would manifest herself into an actual person, because that's the best way she can be around people and experience that love feeling. So Barry, he's down doing his job. Chester shows up, good old Chester P, because Cisco, Chester and Cisco, they trade off episodes or whatever. While they're at the crime site, there was a truck driver that was basically killed. He was frozen to death and then he was shattered. The person that killed him and shattered him stole a chip out of the van, because the chip apparently belonged to Ivo Industries. So, and I thought Ivo was dead because of Arrow, but maybe they changed that due to Crisis. So then the what was this? The DA, like the big shot government DA person, that's got it in out for Killer Frost. She shows up and she's just like, oh, somebody was killed because they were turned to ice. Let's go get Killer Frost. And everybody's like, hold up. Hey, like, first of all, we don't even know it's Killer Frost. It could be anybody. She was just like, oh, let's just check the evidence and then, let's put out a warrant for Killer Frost. So then Joe West was like, hold up. He's like, first of all, she's not even a killer. And she was just like, oh, she'll pay for her crimes. And I feel like this DA person, like I said, this woman has a personal gripe against Killer Frost. Like, there's something that Killer Frost did that affects her directly. What it is, we've yet to find out, but this is more than just, hey, the government sent me all the way down to Central City just to arrest Killer Frost. There's an actual purpose here, and it's like we'll find out soon enough. Like, maybe it's her dad. Like, maybe Icicle is returned, and Icicle, he sent this woman to go bring in his daughter for purposes unknown. But we'll see. Chester goes back to Star Labs. He tells Killer Frost what happened. He's just like, hey, listen, this chick's got it out for you. And then Cecile's like, yeah, you might want to, because Cecile's gonna be her turn. And she was like, you might want to stay under cover, for a couple of days until this whole thing blows over. She was like, let us handle it, we'll take care of it. Killer Frost doesn't want to do it, obviously, but she doesn't have a choice, because like the metahuman task force now is coming for her ass. So so she's upset. She wants to find out who framed her. She wants to find out who set her up. Barry and Chester, they go down to GCPD and they're gonna run tests on the icicle particles that they found at the crime scene. But meanwhile, Killer Frost is like, screw that, I'm gonna hit the streets and I'm gonna do my own thing. Allegra was there too. Like, Allegra was helping Killer Frost with her workout, which is weird because we haven't seen Allegra in a couple of episodes, and she actually looks a lot smaller now. She's like way thinner. So I mean, we know what she's been doing the whole time she hasn't been filming. So she tells her, like, I'm gonna go handle this myself. Promise me that you won't tell the guys. So she hits the streets. Because she's like, if you're looking for a killer, you got to go to where all the killers be at. So she goes down to the bar that she used to work. There's a bartender that worked there, and as soon as the guy turned around, Killer Frost got the hots for the bartender. And I said before, watch, now that Killer Frost and Caitlin are split up, watch one of them end up falling in love with somebody or finding some sort of love interest. So she's talking to the dude, they're kind of like flirting with each other, giving each other the eye. He gives her a little bit of information as to where she could possibly find the person that murdered that guy. She tells him, he tells her to go down to like some abandoned warehouse. Just then he turns on the TV, and then the DA person, she's on the television talking about, oh, there's a warrant out for Killer Frost's arrest, like $100,000 or whatever for anybody who has information. So now everybody at the bar, they see Killer Frost standing right there. So now they're all going to try to kill Killer Frost. Killer Frost ends up beating everybody up. The dude behind the bar ended up giving her a helping hand. Like I said, they kind of flirted with each other, and then she left to go, to go case the warehouse. So she goes to the warehouse. Nothing's there. She hit a dead end. Meanwhile, Now, Barry, he's back at, like I said, him and Chester, they're at CCPD. They're running an analysis, but the analysis is taking a little bit longer than usual. So then the Speed Force shows up because she's just like, oh my God, Barry, I can feel your anxiety. She's like, how can I help? And like I said, and Barry at this point, like, he ain't messing with the Speed Force. Like, he's annoyed at the Speed Force's presence because she keeps trying to like butt in. Even when he was at the crime scene, she came to the crime scene and then, she was just like, oh, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, what are you analyzing? And I'm like, bro, he's looking at her like, there are people here. Like, there are a lot of people here and he just zoomed your way right through the front door. He's like, yo, you gotta back up a little bit. And then she's just like, oh, but I'm trying to help. And every time she's around Barry, because she's like overcharging him, his powers are like going out of whack. Like his hands started shaking, he started vibrating, and then he ended up like blowing up the computer that they needed to do the analysis. So now he got pissed. He yelled at the Speed Force. He was just like, nobody asked for your help. He's like, you picked me to be the hero, so just back off and let me be the hero. And then the Speed Force gets upset, and then she runs away. And Chester's looking at Barry like, well, you done fucked up, right? Because like you just pissed off the one person who could literally strip you of all the power that you had, and then Barry kind of felt bad, so so then he goes back, he goes home to try to clear his head. He talks to Iris. Iris gives him the speech, the traditional Flash speech. She's just like, the Speed Force isn't the same entity that you knew before. She said, hell, you're not the same person that you were before. So instead of being frustrated that the Speed Force isn't who you wish it could be, just appreciate the fact that it's something new and just learn who the Speed Force is now. So then he kind of like comes around for a little bit and he's like, all right, cool. Now the DA agent, she ends up, she gets a warrant out, for the arrest. Because she said she got an anonymous tip that the person said they knew who Killer Frost was. So she goes to the tip, and the tip basically spilled all the beans that Caitlin and Killer Frost are the same person. So now the DA agent calls Joe, tells him to get the Metahuman Task Force together. They go down to Caitlin's house, and they actually arrest Caitlin, not Killer Frost. Caitlin Snow's fingerprints were at the scene of the crime, and their absences, like when one's around the other one isn't. She's like, it's too much of a coincidence. So they lock up Caitlin and they bring her down to prison. So now like Caitlin's locked up in jail. Cecile's talking to her, telling her like, oh, we're gonna fight this. They have nothing to hold you on. Killer Frost ends up calling Cecile, and then she's like, stand back from the north side wall, because she was gonna blow up the wall and bust Katie out of prison. But Caitlin was like, no, because if you do that, then you become the person who they think you are. So you have to do this another way. She was like, she's like, I don't need you to be Killer Frost right now. I need you to be compassionate and be a little bit more human. And then when she said a little bit more human, Caitlin was like, oh snap. So then she goes back to the bar to go talk to the bartender. And then she was just like, bro, you set me up. She was, and he was just like, yeah, because his whole thing was, he was doing experiments at Ivo Labs with computer chips that are able to copy certain metahuman abilities. They thought he was crazy. They fired him. They kicked him out. So he killed the dude from Ivo Labs. He stole his chip back, and he used his chip. He targeted Killer Frost because he was just like, you know what? You're wasting your power. He's like, if I had your power, I'd be doing all the sorts of glorious things, because everybody feels that way. But he was just like, yo, you got these powers and you ain't doing jack with them. So I used the chip. He's like, I lied and told you to go to the warehouse, so I can get I can get like an internal scan of like your tissue and your internal organs. He's like, I put all that information into the chip, and now I put the chip in this bracelet, and this bracelet is now going to mimic your powers and give me Killer Frost powers. So he was just like, now you can call me like Ice Blade or like Sling Blade or something. I think it was like Ice Blade or something like that. So then, her and him and Killer Frost, they get into a fight. They start fighting it out. Just at that moment, Barry goes back to Star Labs, and Chester's like, yo, I cracked the code. He was like, I cracked the DNA code, and he was just like, we have proof now that we can get Killer Frost, we can get Killer Frost off. So then Barry was like, well, that's great, but where is she? Then Allegra was like, well, she went down to the bar. She told me not to say nothing. So then Barry and Allegra, they go down to the bar to go save Killer Frost. Killer Frost ends up defeating, like Sling Blade or whatever, like Steel Blade, whatever he calls it. So Killer Frost defeated him. He's down for the count. Flash and Allegra get there late, and then while they're there, they're just like, oh, we can clear you now. We have the evidence that can clear you. Just at that moment, the DA shows up at the bar with the entire Metahuman Task Force, and then she's like, Killer Frost, come out with your hands up. And at this moment, they were trying to figure out how to get her out of the building, because they didn't want the cops to arrest her. And the only thing that was running through my mind was, one, why didn't Barry just speed her out of the building? And two, if Allegra is supposed to be the new Nash, and she has Nash's gadgets and she has Nash's belt, doesn't she have those smoke pellet things that you can disappear from one place and go to another? So I don't know why they didn't do any of those options. And there, you know, and then and even Barry's like, you're the freaking Flash. You all you gotta do is go outside and vouch for her, and then maybe you could smooth things over. But then before they ended up coming up with logical reasons, Caitlin was just like, Killer Frost was just like, you know what? She was just like, you know, I actually never did pay for my crimes as Killer Frost. You know, she was like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to surrender. She's like, Cecile going to be my lawyer. And if justice is true justice, they'll see the person who I am now, not the person who I was, and I'll get off. But she was like, I got to do this the right way. So she goes outside and, you know, she surrenders herself to the police. So now this DA person, you know, she finally got her rocks off and then she finally got what she wanted. They lock up Killer Frost and then they take her off to prison. They said that Caitlin was trying to work on getting her bail. So we'll see what happens, because in the next episode of The Flash, we're actually going to have the trial of Caitlin Snow. You know, and then finally after that, you know, everybody was just trying to come to terms with the decision that she made. And then, you know, Barry goes home. He talks to Iris. He tells Iris everything that happened. And then he's just like, well, what happens now is up to Killer Frost because it's the choice that she made. Then he, you know, then after that, you know, he kind of felt bad. The Speed Force was still in the house. He spoke to the Speed Force. He apologized for being a dick. And, you know, and then she was just, he was just like, you know, both of us have to get used to, you know, to being new people. So we'll work. He's like, so I'll work on it if you work on it, and then all will be gravy. We'll come together. And then, you know, and then he was just like, but now that we're on the same page, now that, you know, now that we're one, now that Barry Allen and the Speed Force is one, he's like, you know, let's use our power, let's use our knowledge, let's use Team Flash to go take down these new force metas, we'll just call them, these new force metas, so we can save them from the city once and for all. And that's how the episode ended. And I still feel like Nora, Speed Force, Allen has something to do with these entities that are going around terrorizing people. I still feel like my prediction still holds true. These, you know, this time force, the strength force, you know, whatever, all the flying force, all these force entities, I feel like they're the Speed Force's children that she created, that Speed Force Nora created, because since she was birthed with the power of love, she wanted to create children for herself to know what it felt like, you know, to love something and have something love you back and to be a parent. And it's that same thing, because family's the theme here. It's that same thing that's going to bring Bart Allen from the future to the present, and at the end of the season, Iris is going to say that she's pregnant. So thank you for tuning in. Leave your comment down below. Let me know what you think about this particular episode. Are you still on board with the whole fact that Caitlin and Killer Frost are two different people? What do you think of Chester and Cisco swapping out? How do you think the trial of Caitlin's going to go? And do you think my theory is correct about the Speed Force birthing these new Force children? So we'll have a conversation and we'll talk about it. Check me out on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my other videos, because we got the Batwoman review coming up. We got Supergirl coming up later, and we just got Black Lightning. Black Lightning should be up on the channel as well, so check that out. Still got Falcon Winter Soldier at the end of the week, and we'll keep moving on because Legends is on the way too. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and until next time, for the Flash, for the Speed Force, for all the Force, I'm out this.